Okay, I'm back. Yet again, today I'm going to go through some thoughts about the current state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the current works that are out there, which really only amount to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I covered in another episode. I went through the first four episodes of the series. So I'd like to talk about the last two, and also a trailer for Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and just some scattered thoughts about the next few things that are slated to come out. Finally, since COVID knocked everything way the fuck off of alignment here, um, I'm not going to do, as I always say, I'm not going to do a bunch of random speculating about what's going to happen next, but I do have kind of an idea of some things that are happening in phase five of the MCU. I think we're in phase four now. So let's get started. So I watched Talking to the Winter Soldier, episode five, and it's called Truth. And the main reason it was called Truth was because that's a shout out to the Marvel miniseries illustrated by Kyle Baker, who I've met a few times. Cool guy, award-winning artist. He's a black man. And Kyle Baker illustrated this series called Truth, Red, White, and Black, which was the untold story of Isaiah Bradley being the first Captain America, previous to Steve Rogers. And he went on a mission, and then he got kind of decommissioned, and his story was never told because they didn't want a black Captain America. They just wanted to keep experimenting on blacks, like they had with the Tuskegee experiments. So, as I noted in a previous episode, Carl Lumbly, great actor, is playing the elderly Isaiah, elderly but still in pretty damn good shape because he does have the super soldier formula. And in the revised take on it in the MCU, he became a super soldier after Captain America, after Steve had disappeared. He was still kind of a guinea pig. They tried it on a bunch of other African American men. He was the last one to survive, and he got all the powers and abilities. And during the Korean War, they kind of threw him into enemy territory, and one of the things he did was take on the Winter Soldier, and according to Isaiah himself, kicked your ass, and Bucky doesn't really dispute this. Bucky's the guy who knows he existed, by the way. I'm not sure how Bucky found out because he says Steve never knew, but I guess Bucky's been, not been idle during the times he's been hanging out in Wakanda and whatever he's been doing since Avengers Endgame. So, he revealed him to Sam in a prior episode. Great addition to the story. They're exploring all the Captain America mythos, which I love. So anyway, this episode's called Truth, and that's because they are going into some more of the details of Isaiah Bradley. And what's really being called up is Isaiah Bradley does not feel that they were ever going to make him Captain America because instead they put him in prison and experimented on him to see how they can make the super soldier formula work again. Why did it work on him and not the other guys? Why was he the only working recipient up to that time besides Steve Rogers? Though arguably Bucky had it by then, but no one knew Bucky was alive or that he was the Winter Soldier or that he'd been administered a variant on the serum. But a lot of it comes down to, he was erased from history. Like a lot of African Americans who've suffered have been. Show couldn't be more topical, really. I mean, it's not quite as hard edged in that sense in a genre show as Watchmen was, but it is a bit richer. I mean, Watchmen's kind of a theoretical future, near future, well, an alternate world, same time that we're in now, but the world has been, altered as Alan Moore established in the comics. But the racial history of America has remained the same. Uh, so it's allegorical. Hits on some things, but this one really hits it directly, like the idea that the government uh, had Isaiah Bradley declared legally dead. The government did not want a black Captain America, and Isaiah is adamant about this stuff. He feels like Sam is naive, that he doesn't understand that America will never make a black Captain America. And as he puts it, a self respecting black man, will never take the mantle of Captain America. Sam looks a bit troubled. Isaiah says, I was like you once. Um, Isaiah is very bitter, but he's really pragmatic. He's realistic. He's lived long enough um, to see the arc of the latter half of the 20th century and the first part of the 21st play out as far as advances and uh, setbacks in this quest for racial justice in America. So, uh, really, the idea that it was the truth and that Marvel was going to do this thing under the Quesada Gemas era, which was really their best era. I said it came out in the 1990s in my other video. It did not. It came out during the kind of golden renaissance of Marvel, the last one, as far as I'm concerned, that began with Quesada becoming editor in chief and continued with Bill Gemas as president. It became around 2000 and lasted until roughly 2004. I believe Gemas was fired, and the momentum still carried on for a couple of years, and uh, a lot of the last really strong products of this were the works of Ed Brubaker on Captain America, where he introduced the Winter Soldier, and he also did a great run on Daredevil. But as far as I'm concerned, by 2010, Marvel was a dead creative spent force. I know many young comics readers will hate me, but I've kept my eye on it, and not impressed by what I see, but I've talked about that in other videos. Usually the films adapt material from the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, so like roughly early 60s to early to mid 80s, the classic, period, stuff I grew up on, some of it came out before I was born. Um, I collected Marvel throughout the late 80s, and I saw the quality decline drastically under Shooter and then under Tom DeFalco. And then by 93, 94, I was out. And didn't come back till 2000 when Grant Morrison took over New X-Men. And then I knew Quesada had brought in the Marvel Knights line, and was doing some interesting stuff. And then it got real interesting, and a lot of quality people who'd never worked for Marvel worked for them for the first time. A lot of new talent came in, and Gemas took over, and I realized that he was kind of the brainchild of challenging everyone's preconceptions about Marvel. He all but acknowledged that the work of the prior 15 years had been retrogressive, whereas DC was continuing to get more interesting, more consistent in quality, expanding the superhero universe and the interconnectedness of it, while also experimenting with ideas like the Vertigo line for more darker and adult comics. DC had it all over Marvel from the mid 80s to 2000. So Gemas spent about 5 years getting Marvel up to the appropriate level, and in some ways, in the main line of books, surpassing DC's work, really. High quality work. I own almost every issue of almost every series during that period, and I was buying them monthly, something I hadn't done, good lord, many years. And it was during that period, that fertile period, that Truth, Red, White, and Black, was released, and it was cool. Jemas wanted to dig under these characters and the darker side of things, the more controversial side, taking the iconic characters and recasting them in a way that would surprise people, like he did, was responsible for Wolverine Origin. He was responsible for Trouble, which most people now despise, but which was the original, the origin, so to speak, of Ben and May Parker, and was a little bit taboo because it had young Ben and May Parker and some indeterminate past because of the sliding time scale. It would have been probably the 1930s. And I think she got pregnant. Aunt May got pregnant and couldn't have the kid, or the kid died, or something. I didn't read the whole series. I just glanced at the first one, but I read about it. I know it's considered non-canonical now. I'm pretty sure, but in my head canon, why not? I mean, why not expand this stuff? We can talk about the Jemas era another time. I should do a whole video on it. But this was a great. The Ed Brubaker Captain America came out of that, and the Truth storyline with Isaiah Bradley, and the comic Young Avengers with Isaiah's grandson Eli Bradley, who's also a minor character in this show. So, like I said, the crux of the episode Truth is after Sam's kind of gotten his sister's fish boat or whatever business a little more on its feet with Bucky's help, and Bucky and Sam's sister kind of have a little attraction there, which Sam kind of discourages, but I hope something happens. After that, he goes to visit. Well, Bucky gives him an apology after he goes to visit Isaiah, and Isaiah makes these points, and then Falcon relays them to Bucky, and Bucky's like, "Man, I'm sorry. I should have thought of this. The racial thing, and the component when Steve gave you the shield, and I'm really sorry." And Bucky starts to open up, show some emotion and caring, and Sam and him pretty much kind of become friends. For the first time, they're actually kind of officially friends. They bonded through these mundane experiences with the fish boat, and also through the heightened awareness they've gained from this mission they've been on, and the situation with the shield and Captain America and the super soldier formula. In the midst of all this, Carly Morgenthau, I believe the actress Erin Kellyman, she's incredible. She's one of the real high points of this series, one of the best performances. She's still building her worldwide movement based around the Flag Smashers and all open international borders, no more sovereign countries, just like it was during the 5-year blip after Thanos eliminated half of all living creatures on Earth. And then the people came back, and there was all kinds of displacement and diaspora and refugees, and the governments jumped in and became authoritarian once again, especially apparently America, of course. And so Carly, in the last episode, she accidentally killed this Cat Battlestar, who was the sidekick to John Walker, the new Captain America. And John Walker had surreptitiously taken the last vial of super soldier formula that had been manufactured for the Flag Smashers. So he finally had the formula, and he, in a murderous rage, killed Carly's right-hand man, thinking he did it, when actually Carly herself was responsible for the fatal blow against Battlestar. So John was a little nutty, and of course, in the last shot of the last episode, there's blood all over his shield. Like, kind of an obvious metaphorical thing, but still an iconic kind of shot. So John Walker's still pretty unhinged in this episode, and early in the episode, Falcon and Winter Soldier track him down. Between the two of them, finally managed to kick his ass. He snaps off Sam's wings, which is a pretty dramatic scene. I mean, it's kind of another kind of symbolic on several levels scene. Well done. And then he's going to kill him with the shield. But, Bucky, Bucky fucks him up, I believe. and he finally gets taken down. Um, and they take him into custody apparently. So Sam keeps the shield. Um, so in custody, Walker has this trial. There's this one senator character. He seems to be the catch-all senator. I guess he's like a conflation or a polyglot of different characters rather than have a whole Congress or a whole Senate. They just have this one old guy representing America's interests, and he's a senator. And he also happens to be on the committee of the Global Repatriation Committee, which is causing so much trouble that Carly wants to put an end to. Um, this guy gives the hearing to Walker, and Walker is disgraced. He's given an other than honorable discharge. And they're basically like, you keep talking, you're going to get court martialed, so fuck off, and no Captain America for you. And Walker's still pretty hot headed and enraged, but he and his wife are, who's also a black woman, by the way, Walker being deliberately in casting, and not far from the comics, too, a blonde haired, blue eyed white man like Steve Rogers, because that's another, they're making the point the government wants this kind of guy to be their front man, this kind of Aryan poster boy. Ironic since the blonde haired, blue eyed, white Steve Rogers battled and defeated some Aryans a long time ago. But that's always been an ironic thing about Captain America. And Jim Kruger did an interesting alternate origin for that in his Earth X Universe X series that I thought was really cool. So the disgraced John and his wife are approached by a woman called Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, longtime Marvel character from the 60s, created by Jim Steranko, the guy that Clark Gregg told, if you don't like our S.H.I.E.L.D. show, go make your own. Kind of done with Clark Gregg and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after that. I never liked the series anyway. But now knowing that most of the last like 4 or 5 seasons, pretty much all but the first seasons, are now non-canonical to MCU, did make me feel better, which that also kind of writes out the spinoff Inhumans, which was a little disappointment. I've talked about those in a different show also. So let me try to stay on track. I know it's a difficult thing for me. Valentina is played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who is still good at comedy timing and witty barbs. I didn't know until recently that she won 11 Emmys for comedy work on television. That's amazing. She's like up there with like Bryan Cranston. No, she's beyond Bryan Cranston. She's up there with like Tony Geary and the fucking daytime Emmys, who won like 11 for Luke Spencer over the years on General Hospital. So props to her. She's the only thing I ever liked about the show Seinfeld. There were some funny supporting characters, but I never cared for Seinfeld or those other two guys. Just not my bag. But I always appreciate her. She started out in the '80s on Saturday Night Live during what were, to me, its last years of real superb work. I know I'm in the minority thinking that, but I'm in the minority in a lot of things, man. So she's an attractive woman. I've always thought that. A very funny woman. So now she's, I think, recently turned 60. So it looks fantastic. And Valentina, she's in all black, high heels, and like a burgundy shirt underneath, and black gloves. And she's got her hair all swept up big like Valentina, and big earrings. But instead of the white streak through the hair like the comic books character, she has black hair with a purple streak through it. I dig her. I think she's just hilarious. And obviously, what somebody described her as, maybe Kevin Feige, as a darker but funnier Nick Fury. And I see that. She's kind of going to be a prime mover kind of character, maybe getting teams together, getting missions together, covert, dark ops missions, perhaps. Perhaps she used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. Perhaps in this reality, her and Nick were once lovers. I really hope they do go there, because Nick Fury's never had a romantic attachment in the MCU. So I was really happy to see a character that she has been revived in recent years in Marvel Comics, but pretty much solely as a villain. Like she'd been a spy and a sleeper agent all those years. She was fucking Nick Fury. I didn't like that. I mean, I didn't. Yeah, like I said, the modern Marvel. Anyway, I guess her current level of profile, mixed with the really smart job they do in digging out deep older characters, prompted them, especially with the connections to Nick Fury and Shield, and also to the upcoming Secret Invasion they're going to do. Made her a nice character to pull out, and the casting was interesting and on the nose, caught people's attention. It was kept very under wraps. I admit I didn't read a lot of the fan bro stuff in between episodes, but I had no idea that she was going to be in the series, much less play Valentina. Valentina was the longtime Marvel character that would surprise people because she's a pretty obscure character nowadays, even with the more recent appearances where she's a villain. I don't think she'll be a villain in this, but I don't think she'll be a hero either. She'll be a manipulator and kind of try to get things done. Fury had that aspect. He had a shrewd, manipulative aspect to him. The Sam Jackson Fury. Of course, a lot of that was mitigated later when he found out the Shield was Hydra and they tried to kill him. So I liked that. That was a nice cameo and a pleasant surprise. So moving on, near the end of the show, almost the very end, John Walker begins single-handedly forging his own shield. I guess out of regular metal or steel, and I guess he's determined to be Captain America at all costs. But she does tell him, you acquiring super soldier formula can be of great use to a lot of people, interested parties. So, but in the meantime, Carly is trying to commandeer a terrorist attack on the Global Repatriation Committee's headquarters. They're having a meeting. Sure enough, that ubiquitous old senator guy's there. He runs everything. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's no president or no chain of command or democracy, but America's bad enough as it is now. But after the blip, who knows how fucked up their structure is. Though we do learn a little more in the last episode. There's also a scene with Sharon, which I didn't really think much of at the time. She was hiring someone and offering them money, and I thought that was just her doing her shady work in Madripoor that came out of her being kind of an embittered, disgraced former SHIELD agent. But if I'd really paid close attention, then I would have had an inkling of the twist involving her in the last episode. And I had no clue. I was shocked. So I'll get to that. So episode 6, we're coming in and, with episode 6, there's an attempt to stop all this stuff that's going on at the Global Repatriation Committee. I guess I need to start saying GRC building. It gets kind of complicated. Bucky's trying to do his part, and Sharon pops up and volunteers to help also. And one thing we saw towards the end of the last episode, a major thing that I didn't mention, is Sam, once he has the shield and once he's talked to Isaiah Bradley, he begins training with it, and also training just in general, his body, his acrobatics, his athletic skills, his strength, his stamina, his reaction time. He doesn't have a super soldier formula, but he gets pretty damn good with the shield, and the shield kind of has I don't know if it does now, but at one time it had kind of a magnetic thing inside it, helped it to help it come back when you threw it like a boomerang. That was in the comics. They kind of hinted at that in the Avengers movies, also because he can lock it. Cap could lock it on the back of his backpack, but I'm not really sure if it still comes back that way or it just started coming back to Cap just because he was so damn good with bouncing it off shit and it's vibranium. But Sam doesn't master that at first. He has to really get into it. So I'm going to assume several days or maybe weeks go by between his visit with Isaiah and come to Jesus moment with Bucky and the attack on the GRC. And that's during that time period also John Walker's making his shield. So here we go. We're going to have two Captain Americas in episode 6. And to stop this attack on this place, Sam shows up, and he's now one of the Captain Americas. He's got a revised costume, very similar to the costume he wore in the comic books in recent years when he became Captain America, with the wings and the shield, which I always thought that was overkill, and I never saw the point of making him Captain America. But they made it work for this show. I hope it won't be a permanent development because I like the Falcon. But at the same time, they're going to try to make it work, and not just the storytellers trying to make it work, but obviously Sam and his allies are going to try to make it work in the world as it is now, a different world. Carly had aspirations to kind of destroying the shield and killing John Walker, Captain America, as a statement, and saying, here's the new super soldier. We're going to be, because she's racially mixed and a woman and young and, a foreign national. And so she was going to say, hey, I'm the new super soldier. I'm the pattern that people look up to for a different world than the one that they looked up to Steve for in World War II. So she's got some good points, obviously. Unfortunately, as much as Falcon takes on Georges Batroc Ziliper from the comics, who we also saw, I guess, in the Winter Soldier movie. Yeah. And he's working for someone, and I should have made the connection, like I said, but it's Sharon who calls him there. Again, that doesn't necessarily totally condemn Sharon, but still, he wants to kill the Falcon, so they don't say that when he talks to Sharon, but they do say it when Carly and him meet. So like I said, I didn't make the connection between these characters being involved with each other. I'll get to that. So Batroc fights Sam, holds way too much of his own against Sam, I thought. But, he's knocked out of the way, and Sam rescues a bunch of people, and John Walker pops up there to cause trouble as Captain America. He's mainly there to kill Carly for revenge for Battlestar's death and also for leading him to the events that disgraced him. So they do some fighting, and finally, there's this big truck of people, and it's about to collapse, tumble off this building. It's barely holding on. So Bucky can't get it, and John Walker's the only one around who's strong enough to do something, and he has to choose between attacking Carly or saving these people. And it seems to be a hard choice for him for a couple minutes, but he makes the right choice, and his morally right choice, and does save the people. From then on, he works alongside, I guess grudgingly, the new Captain America and Winter Soldier Bucky. And they're trying to, again, finish off Carly. But while they're containing all this madness at this GRC place, the super soldiers are kind of trying to get away. But Carly is kind of, Sam confronts Carly, and it's like, you don't have to do this, no more killing. He gives her the whole kind of spiel he's given her before. She does like Sam, but she doesn't trust Sam. And again, we touched on the race thing, albeit not overtly directly through words, but she says, I thought you of all people would understand why I'm doing this. And, she's basically saying this whole, nationalism shit is to me, she's saying the whole nationalism shit is what created slavery and racism, or, fed into it, and created the problems when the snapped out individuals came back. They wanted to reclaim power and perpetuate that imperialism again. And she's basically saying, this guy, he's a black guy in America, his ancestors built America as slaves, and which Sam does mention to Isaiah later on. Well, by the time this happens, Carly, Sharon's found Carly, and we learn, and I was a bit floored that Sharon Carter is the power broker for Madripoor. I was a little stunned. I did not see that coming. Maybe I'd have, if I'd paid attention to the clue in episode 5 with Batroc, I would have figured it out. Um, I'm disappointed in Sharon. I mean, I'm fine with the revelation story wise. But man, I really liked Sharon. I liked the character. I liked the actress. I thought she was a cool ally. But this is another way to take things, and not everybody who's been fucked over by America is willing to forgive. I guess like Sam and Steve were when they became outlaws. So by the end of the show, she's killed Carly, probably to avoid Carly telling the truth about Sharon. And Sam doesn't get it. He thinks she killed her in self-defense. And so Sam, flies her body down and surrounded by, cops and ambulances and such, and also that damn senator again and those politicians, the committee that runs this place. And they're all like these rich 1%, white people, and, aged. And Sam lays it on the line, man. He basically tells the guy he's sick of his shit without using those words. And he talks about him being Captain America, and he talks about Carly and the value of her life and why she did what she did, and the fact that even though she exhibited some questionable, dubious tactics, that she was right, and that the global repatriation people are fucking people up and creating refugees, which is going to lead to war. Again, commentary on our real current reality. And it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. I mean, but the thing is, it's filmed and it's broadcast all over the world. So now everybody sees Sam as Captain America, and they see him speaking truth to power. So it's pretty rousing, all the stuff he's saying about the 1% and everything. The whole plot is an analogy, and he's really dead on about the wisdom he's trying to impart on these people. And he's like, I'm going to be Captain America. I don't have blonde hair and blue eyes or super soldier formula. I just got the desire to do better, that we can do better. Humanity and America can do better. So people seem to be celebrating him, the common people, becoming Captain America. Isaiah, who was skeptical, is a little touched and a little proud. And, Sam does say, our people built this country. And he means literally the slaves, like I mentioned earlier, constructed it. We should be able to represent it. So ideologically, I have mixed feelings about this, just the same way Isaiah did. But I get it. I get what Sam's trying to do. He's an inveterate idealist like Steve Rogers, and that moral compass is what him and Steve shared, what made them become best friends and partners and stick together when they were both outlaws, and what made Steve give Sam the shield over anyone else. Bucky is finishing up some of his loose ends and seems to be salving his conscience a bit. He sees Sam's sister again, and it's obvious that Sam and him are now good friends. There's a positive vibe between them. So they may be partners from here on. And maybe Bucky will hook up with Sarah, Sam's sister. That'd be pretty cool. Obviously, he's not a racist, so that's a relief. He does a good turn in this, because in last episode he kind of found Zemo and distracted him while the Dora Milaje came and arrested him, and they took him to the raft. Which was kind of where the Avengers, the rebellious Avengers, were at the end of Civil War. But also, the raft was referenced quite a bit in Jessica Jones season 2. It's a place where, well, it's just exactly like it is in the comic books. It's kind of like this floating prison, super max level. I don't think Zemo is considered, on the level of some of the other prisoners as far as his physical power. But obviously, he's considered a menace and a threat, and he's going to be the rest of his life. And he surrenders and kind of, I don't know if you'd say he wishes James the best. He calls him James, Bucky. But again, Daniel Kroll has really vastly improved his performance, and the writing's better for him, and Malcolm Spellman's writing and his and others people's directions on this. And Kroll, I think, has become a better actor, frankly. There are some valences in there to where you think Zemo does kind of consider himself a hero. And to the point where he does something that also shocked me. It didn't shock me as much as Sharon being the power broker. But basically, Sam lets the remaining super soldiers, they surrender to the authorities who are just outgunning them at this time. And the guy who loads them on the kind of moving brig they're sent on to go to the place where they get taken to the raft is a soldier, a black soldier. And as they're getting in, he says to them, "One world, one people," which was Carly's motto. So they're like, oh man, they really do have people everywhere, and they do really have millions sympathetic to her cause. And now, of course, she's a martyr. So this could be real trouble, especially if these people are left, even in prison, to from afar to commandeer this movement. But the thing is, almost all of them, if not all of them, are in this one armored car, and it's blown to Kingdom Come by this old guy in a car with a remote, who we quickly learn was hired by Zemo. So Zemo really is like all about, I'm killing the fucking super soldiers. So again, he's heroic in his own mind. So I'm looking forward to Zemo breaking out again and causing more trouble and trying to do right but doing wrong, and vice versa, and wearing the purple mask. Groovy reinvention of a character by making it closer to the comic books, which is always, to me, always a good thing in these Marvel things. I'm deeply biased. Sometimes they improve on the stuff from the comics, but I hate it when they whole cloth change things, and especially when it doesn't improve it. So that's kind of where we're at. At the end, Sharon is pardoned at Sam's, urging, and makes a call, and it's obvious that now she's going to be highly placed in the government. They don't say what organization. Obviously, there's no shield. Maybe she's going back to the CIA. But now she's going to have access to all this top secret shit, which they can funnel into her power broker organization, which I assume is still based in Madripoor. And we'll get back to Madripoor one more time in this video. So that's the series. The 5th episode was fantastic. The 6th was good. Sam's costume I didn't really love as Captain America / Flying Captain America, but he's got the white mask in here with the red goggles still. But the white mask is covering his face, and it shows his mouth and nose here, and then his hair is sticking up the top. It's the exact mask, the iconic old school, not the original, not the original, but the iconic white and red costume that he had for many years in Marvel, and still wears a variation on when he's not being Captain America. And so that was cool to see the Falcon in that mask. That was awesome. It's like, damn, that is the Falcon. So yeah, so he's got the wings and the shield, and I don't know how this is going to play out, but they did announce there's going to be Captain America 4. And as the show ends with the title, it goes from Falcon and the Winter Soldier closing to being called now Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So I'm wondering if the 4th movie will be called Captain America and the Winter Soldier, as opposed to the 2nd one being called Captain America, the Winter Soldier. But I'm going to assume that based on the buddy thing going on, that Winter Soldier, White Wolf, Bucky, what have you, he is going to be Captain America's sidekick. Captain America and Bucky, man. Finally going to happen. Isn't that weird? But it's, it's Sam, and it's like Bucky after he's been a villain and after Steve was kind of his sidekick. I enjoyed it. So I had watched the trailer to Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I was kind of disappointed in a lot of things about it. Uh, Shang Chi apparently is now like a denizen of San Francisco. He's been for a while, and he just kind of hangs out with his friends who are mostly fellow young Asians in San Francisco, and they, I don't know, do karaoke or something. They're just fun-loving kids. They look more like an '80s movie kind of scene than a modern. But reminding you, this still takes place in the 2020s, because the 5 years blip there, so they're ahead of us by a few years. Um, Shang Chi. I'm not familiar with the actor. I can't remember his name. I'm terrible. He doesn't have the gentle, almost beautiful feminine appearance of the comic character. Kind of the delicate features and the really thin, lithe muscles frame of Bruce Lee, who he obviously, well, not originally when Jim Starlin designed him, but when Paul Gulacy did his incredible run on Master of Kung Fu, he used a lot of pictures of Bruce Lee as photo reference, and so he doesn't have the long hair, he doesn't have the sash, he doesn't even yet have the more recent costumes, which the only thing they have in common is that he doesn't wear a mask and they're predominantly red. But other than that, they don't look anything like the classic one that we're all used to from the 70s and 80s. I mean, he didn't wear that costume in the 2000s, the Gemas era. There was the Marvel Max adult line, and Doug Minch and Paul Gulacy came back to the character and made a Master of Kung Fu miniseries as a Max series, which almost didn't seem to make sense to be a Max series because it only had a little cursing and maybe one topless scene, not much gore. I mean, it could have just been a Marvel Knights series, but it was still cool. It's a good series. Have read through it once. I wanted to buy the trade paperback, and some reason that kept eluding me. So I went ahead and just bought the individual issues a couple of years ago on eBay, and I really need to kind of sit down and read it carefully. It's definitely a continuation of the series, as in the old comic series, in the sense that Shang-Chi is drawn once again into the missions of the British MI6, spy intelligence agencies, and yet again, even though, of course, he thought he was dead and they can't use him because of copyright, but yet again, it all roads leads to Fu Manchu, his father. They just don't call him Fu Manchu. It's obviously him. So this is problematic, I guess, for adapting into a movie. And at first, I was like, why not be more close to the comic? But then I thought, with the way the trailer's done, I rewatched it, and I also watched a video on it breaking it down with all the Easter eggs and frame by frames, a lot of which I'd missed, and some of this guy's insider, knowledge from rumors, and some of it was speculation. And he was wrong. Like for instance, he said that the power broker in Falcon and Winter Soldier was going to turn out to be the Mandarin. He was convinced. So oh well, fuck that up, guy. It was before the last Falcon episode, just a couple of days before. So that's another secret they really kept under wraps. Oh, and Valentina does appear again in the last episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and gives John the new costume and the new name of U.S. Agent, and his costume's just like the comics, and he's kind of calmed down. He's not so psycho anymore. So, they've two characters right there, U.S. Agent and Valentina, that they have now officially adapted fairly well to the MCU, and I'm happy about that. But back to Shang-Chi. So you're not going to have the trappings of like Liko Wu, Shang-Chi's on and off girlfriend. You're not going to have the MI6 agents like Black Jack Tar and the British Clive Reston, who, was the son of James Bond and great nephew of Sherlock Holmes. And you're not going to have the Sax Romer characters running it like Sir Dennis Nayland Smith and Donald Petrie, who are from the old novels by Sax Rohmer, which, by the way, I did a Fu Manchu Sax Rohmer reissue novel video years ago, which She Never Slept. It's actually gotten a lot of views for some reason or another. The lighting's terrible. But if you want to go back and watch it, go. It's under Retrodrome, I think was the show I was doing then, and it's Retrodrome Fu Manchu. Um, I'll probably talk about all this stuff in that one too, but basically Marvel lost the rights to do Fu Manchu, and so Fu Manchu stopped appearing as Fu Manchu. Nayland Smith and Petrie didn't appear. Fa Lu Sui, the daughter of Fu Manchu, stopped appearing. They had to kind of obfuscate everything for when they wanted to use. They could use the characters that were Marvel copyrighted, like Blackjack Tar, Clive Reston, Lako Wu, etc., and of course, good old Shang Chi, with less emphasis on calling him Master of Kung Fu, really, which really was just the name of the comic book. He didn't really go around going, "Hi, I'm Master of Kung Fu." If it had been a David Carradine version, I'm sure he would have, but just kidding. Actually, it'd been a Bruce Lee character. I could see that too. But Shang-Chi was kind of a modest, quiet, philosophical type. And he was kind of a reluctant secret agent ally. One guy on Facebook thread, not Facebook, YouTube comments on the trailer said, "Man, he hardly talks in the trailer. What's up with that?" And I just wrote that, well, he rarely ever spoke in the comic books. And that's true. He rarely ever spoke. He narrated through captions, and occasionally he would utter some kind of terse, to the point commentary and a little bit of philosophy. Mostly, he would just kind of watch and go with the flow. And when the time was right, when he was psyched up for it, he would just, kick a lot of ass, I guess you could say. Just no other way of putting it, really, at this point. So, what about Shang-Chi in the MCU? Personality's different. He seems like a happier, more outgoing guy. He's got some friends, some young Asian friends. He hasn't spent his entire life up to his late teens training by Fu Manchu to take out Sir Dennis Nayland Smith and his agents. So they've changed it a lot. And actually, the way they've constructed this, the trailer is narrated by Tony Leung, which is the most I've heard him speak in English ever. And I've said before in other videos, he's my favorite actor in the world. And I love his narration in the Wong Kar-wai films and some in the Wong Kar-wai films. And his English is better than it used to be, less accented, more, articulate, but he sacrificed a little bit of his narrative prowess. And again, it could be whoever directed the voiceover for the trailer. Not really Tony's fault. But it was still effective. And basically it sets it up. It sets it up kind of like Tony Leung is the main character. And, really look at Shang-Chi's comic books. Really, Fu Manchu was the main character. It was a Fu Manchu comic book. And Shang-Chi was like a riff on it. Like, let's have him have a son in the modern day as a master of Kung Fu, because Kung Fu is big right now. This is the early 70s. So, again, I think the father is the major character. But what they've done is they've kind of created a conflation between several things. Between Fu Manchu, obviously, the angle of him being Shang-Chi's father and training him, and they do it in the voiceovers. I trained you for years so that no one could stop you. And he also says, I gave you 10 years of your life. So I guess he let him out into the wild, so to speak, and that's why he's in San Francisco hanging out, being just, a late teen kid. But he's still got like a jade necklace, and he's doing some kind of Buddhist kind of prayer, and he's, still like hitting he goes back to the monastery where he trained, and he's still like hitting the wood the way he was taught. And they showed flashbacks with the young Shang-Chi. The young Shang-Chi, physically is of a very different cast than the main actor. He actually looks more like the comic book version. So, but they didn't get someone grown up who looked like that. Um, but that's kind of interesting because he's still saying in the narration, this character Wen Wu, played by Tony Young, because they've called him all kinds of things in the comics to avoid calling him Fu Manchu. They've called him Han and Saint Germain, Count Saint Germain, and one other name, and I forgot what it was, but it was a name similar to Wen Wu. I think that's what they settled on. Um, so he's narrating to him. It's in the second person, and he's like, I gave you 10 years to build, have a life. Basically, I'm calling you home to do your mission. So that's similar, but the mission is not to go out and kill Nayland Smith directly and all that, and then run afoul of the British Secret Service, Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I see why they've changed things, not just with Fu Manchu. Let me get back to Fu Manchu real quick. Wen Wu is kind of the Mandarin. He's the true Mandarin, the one that had the fake Mandarin killed in the Hail to the King Marvel short. And he killed Trevor Slattery, the Ben Kingsley character from Iron Man 3, which I personally thought was just a dreadful fucking movie. I think it's like my second to the least favorite of all of them, except for Incredible Hulk, which I hated. Iron Man 3 really bit. But anyway, in that one, the Mandarin's not really the Mandarin. He's like a faux terrorist. He's a British actor. Of course, they're riffing on the fact, the stunt casting, Ben Kingsley is half British and half Indian, i.e. Asian. So, but he's also kind of a buffoonish character once he's exposed. So they kill him off. The real Mandarin and the Ten Rings organization, which they hinted at strongly from the first Iron Man movie on, as being like an international terror cartel of some kind. So now we're going to meet the real Mandarin. It is Wen Wu. So, who is this Wen Wu guy and how is he portrayed in the trailer? Because, like I said, he's kind of the main character. Why? Not just because of what I've said, but it's fucking Tony Leung, one of the most celebrated and awarded actors on Earth, and has the biggest box office, has had the biggest box office draw in terms of sheer people, because there's like 1 billion people in China. He, a huge star on the level of Chow Yun Fat, and they've done some great movies together. But the Wong Kar-wai movies are where he's kind of shown as a dramatic actor. But he's done a lot of crime movies, including like Hard Boiled with Chow Yun Fat, where he played a cop undercover as a gangster. He's played gangsters, he's played cops, but then he's also been in a lot of these wuxia movies, and wuxia being a genre that kind of came to prominence in the 60s, especially with King Hu's films, such as Come Drink With Me and A Touch of Zen. I don't know if I've reviewed any King Hu movies yet on here, but I should. I've got a couple on Criterion. But he's the blueprint of wuxia, which is influenced by these older Chinese novels, stuff like Journey to the West and these things that have like 5,000 million volumes and these long convoluted stories, and very few of them have been completely translated into English to this day. And wuxia is also the genre that Tony Leung's character, Cha Wan, is writing about in the film 2046. So King Hu was making these, which is also set in the 60s, which is when King Hu was making these, his best films in the genre. He continued to make more up to his death. But, Touch of Zen, Come Drink With Me, and Dragon Gate Inn, those are kind of the three classics. All great. And so the wuxia, is basically like, it is a martial arts, but it's also kind of fantasy. It's like sword play, just as much sword play as martial arts and weaponry and, unarmed and armed combat, whereas most of the Kung Fu movies are unarmed combat. And a lot of it is fanciful, and like the characters seem to have supernatural abilities, and, they jump through trees and they walk on water and they take a running leap and jump at you with a sword, and they're going straight this way. I mean, somehow they're like Superman flying. Um, it's crazy. But I'm sure you guys have seen movies like this, even if you're not a fan of King Hu or the older wuxia movies, especially the great ones that came out in the late 80s to early 90s. And Tony Leung was in quite a few of them. There were ones popularized in the 20th century. Ang Lee made Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in 2000. It turned out to be a hit worldwide, and it was exactly a King Hu influenced fantasy tinged period story. Michelle Yeoh was the star. We'll get back to her. Um, and then came Zhang Yimou's Hero, which had Jet Li and Maggie Cheung and uh, Tony Leung once again, ladies and gentlemen. Wong Kar Wai did a wuxia movie called um, Ashes of Time or Ashes of Time Redo, and that also co-starred Tony Leung. He wasn't the main character; that was Leslie Cheung's character. Rest in peace, Leslie Cheung. But Tony Leung is a swordsman in it. He's like a half-blind swordsman, and he does that great narration in Cantonese that he does in the other Wong films. Um, so yeah, so wuxia got popular, among American and art house audiences in the 20th century. Zhang Yimou made other ones like House of Flying Daggers and Curse of the Golden something or other. Curse of the uh, I sold the movie. It was beautiful to look at, but it really was kind of dull. Um, we can't win them all. I love Hero. Hero's amazing. House of Flying Daggers is really nice, and Zhang Ji is in both of those movies. Uh, is she in both of them? Yeah, she's in both of them, and she started her career in Crouching Tiger. So this movie has obviously got Crouching Tiger in its DNA. It's got the wuxia in its DNA. Now it doesn't look like it's got the Shaw Brothers classic kung fu stuff. Shaw Brothers Golden Harvest, late '60s to early '80s, classic Hong Kong kung fu film vibe. Something I thought should have been done in Iron Fist and was not at all. However, it's obvious this guy can actually fight, or at least, act as if he's fighting. Again, I'm forgetting the lead actor's name to play Shang Chi. It just in the trailer alone, the stuff he does is more impressive than anything Finn Jones did as Iron Fist in 2 seasons on Netflix. Now, Colleen was a good fighter and um, Asian American. Uh, this is going to have the authenticity that people were screaming for because of the problem with Iron Fist being the white savior, but it wasn't just the plot, which Roy Thomas made up for the comics, but it was also the fact Ben Jones didn't have much time to train when he started this show, and it really shows. And his character can be kind of annoying. He can be really cool and nice, but unless you have a situation like in Defenders where you've got someone bouncing off him like pushing back like Matt Murdock. That was a strong dynamic. Um, but yeah, Iron Fist was kind of a failure in these areas. So even though it looks as though the makers of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is not going to visually uh, emulate, I'm sure there'll be some homages, but they're not going to blatantly physically emulate, cinematically emulate the Shaw Brothers Golden Harvest era of classic Hong Kong kung fu films from which Bruce Lee was sprung. Um, but they are going to homage the wuxia quite a bit. And there's a few scenes that look great. Look like they could be right out of Crouching Tiger or even the 90s ones like Butterfly Sword. That's my favorite wuxia movie of all time, Butterfly Sword. It's beautiful. Um, yeah, Tony Leung, Michelle Yeoh. Uh, so they've got it. The whirling camera work, the wire fu or wire work, and the costumes and the jumping over the trees and the flying. It's all in these flashbacks, which this helpful breakdown video I went through it and it really gave me a lot more hope for the movie than when I first saw the trailer. because I wasn't sure of the context of these scenes. So, doing the frame by frame with this guy, what we're seeing in those scenes is the origins of Wenwu, who became the Mandarin. So, what we're also kind of seeing is that he's probably immortal. Now, the Mandarin wasn't immortal, and the Mandarin did not originally have magical powers. That's the 1990s edition into Marvel. He definitely was not immortal. However, Fu Manchu is immortal. So, like I said, they've conflated Fu Manchu with the comic book Mandarin, and they've added elements from two strong Hong Kong subgenres. I mentioned wuxia. The other is like the heroic bloodshed or Hong Kong crime film, which came to prominence in the 80s with movies like A Better Tomorrow, Better Tomorrow 2, of course, The Killer, all by John Woo, all starring Chow Yun-fat, and then you got Hard Boiled in '92 with Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung. And there was a ton of other ones. And the legacy of that kind of film has gone down through Hong Kong cinema, which, because really ended when Hong Kong was repatriated in 1997. But through contemporary Chinese action cinema, crime dramas, and especially in the waves of South Korean, excellent South Korean crime dramas from this millennium. They've been obviously strongly influenced by the work done by directors like John Woo and Ringo Lam, and with actors like Tony Leung and Chow Yun-fat, Maggie Cheung, etc. So Jackie Chan, obviously, and so that's cool because we see some flashbacks of little Shang Chi being kind of taken through his father's, maybe a night in the evening of his father, like fucking up his enemies or collecting his racketeering dues. And Tony Leung looks like a contemporary character, like he played in those characters. He's just a little older now. And he does have the 10 rings, and the 10 rings are not finger rings, but they're wrist rings, and hence the 10 rings, 5 and 5. And they do seem to give him enhanced powers, which may or may not be magical of some kind, mystical. They changed the character, the Mandarin's origin in the 90s. They did make him look more like an Asian kind of movie villain character than he'd ever looked before. So that was cool. But they made his rings origin, which originally the rings were part of the power supply of this alien craft from Macron, an alien race in Marvel, and he wore them and harnessed their power. And the first comic I saw where they told that origin was written by my favorite writer of comics, Steve Gerber, Iron Man 57, I believe, right after Thanos was introduced onto the world in Iron Man. And in that issue, Mandarin is breaking a little out of his conventional costume at times, and he's exhibiting kung fu, which that was the right era, 72, 73. And of course, there's hippie protesters outside of Stark Industries protesting munitions manufacturing, and all of that made its way, sans the Vietnam War backdrop then, but it made its way into the movie Iron Man 1, and Tony did at the end cease manufacturing weapons to kill people. But the Mandarin in that issue was very formidable even without the rings. He like at one point he cracked part of Iron Man's armor with this targeted kung fu karate chop. Well, whatever. And that was cool. That was my first exposure to the Mandarin. In the 90s, they wanted to make him even more cool, but they shifted his origin from science fiction into sorcery magic. And they claimed that the rings all had these powers, and each one had the soul of some cosmic protector trapped in it. And the guardian was a dragon, and the dragon was the old Jack Kirby character from the 50s, Fin Fang Foom. Fin Fang Foom is a popular kind of cult character in Marvel. He's kind of silly in a way and kind of fearsome in another way and very weird and very Kirby looking. There's a rumor he's going to be in this film. Now, I tend to wonder if Wenwu, the Mandarin, received or forged these 10 rings of power that he wears on each wrist uh, by getting them from the dragon or encountering the dragon, whether he made them, found them, mastered them, stole them, whatever. Now we're getting into like Ring of the Nibelung, with Siegfried kills the Fafnir and gets the gold ring. Um, and of course, the Lord of the Rings sprung out of that. So maybe I'd be interested to see how they do it. There's no Fin Fang Foom in the trailer. There are some kind of mystical creatures and there's some mystical battles shown really fast in the past that Wenwu is leading. He does exhibit some mystic abilities, and even in the scene where he's just kind of going down into the criminal underworld in the modern day with little Shang Chi, he breaks up a card game and whap, karate chops the table, but you see the rings glowing and there's this kind of glowing after effect coming off of it. So this is cool. He's got the power. I think they've conflated these sources, dare I say it, really well. Because a key shot that won me over was the Mandarin in his throne or chair, and he's kind of sitting like this, as villains do when they're contemplating. And he has long hair, and it's in a top knot, and the old robes, and it's the kind of character look that Tony Leung has had in several films, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. But it's also the kind of look that the Mandarin in the comics adopted in the 1990s. That long hair and that top knot and the robe, he had me. All he was missing was the mustache, the long mustache. But unlike with the Mandarin and Fu Manchu and Yellow Claw and these other Yellow Peril characters that are kind of politically incorrect these days, they're obviously not going to give Tony Leung the long mustache, like the Ming the Merciless mustache. It's just obviously too on the nose. I mean, visually it'd probably look killer, but I get it. He's a handsome guy. He doesn't need that. But so that vibe of this character, the Mandarin, I love because I grew up loving Fu Manchu. I grew up loving the Mandarin, both. And that to me is the gist of the film, is his journey, Wenwu's journey to becoming the Mandarin, probably mostly in flashbacks, and him claiming Shang-Chi as, hey, I'm back, you're my son, now you have to do what I trained you to do. And he has certain agents, which are right from the comic books, the Death Dealer, who looks amazing, and Razor Fist, who looks less amazing. The effects are cool, but actor seems less impressive. I think he's some real-life MMA fighter, but I'm glad they're in it, especially Death Dealer. He just looks fantastic. And Shang-Chi does have a sister. They've renamed her. She's his older sister. She's not Fa Lo Sui, who was raised before who was an adult before Shang-Chi was born, because she too had the elixir Vitae that extended her life. And I don't know if Wenwu's going to have an elixir or if the magic of the rings is keeping him alive. In the modern day, he looks just kind of like Tony Leung with short hair and kind of in a business suit. So it's kind of interesting. They've kind of funneled this old, Asian kind of wizard look down to this kind of criminal mastermind in a suit. I kind of did the same thing with a character I had. I had a character, well, he's in Flicker Street, but he's dead now. His name was Kong, and Kong was like a half Asian character. And, he tended to dress more ornately, and he at one time had a long mustache. But he really was supposed to be Asian, and he was a master of all kinds, was master of all kinds of martial arts disciplines, and he had his own group, the Black Skull Society, that trained at Bing Ki, a monastery. This is all in my Flickr Street material online on Facebook, and some of it in my videos. But at one point, Kong is apparently bumped off, and when I bring him back, he has a small mustache. He looks kind of vaguely Asian, but his hair's shorter, is black, and he's wearing a white business suit and a black tie. And that's the look I had for him to the end. So I was kind of when I made that up, I was kind of influenced by the idea of changing these larger than life characters into these kind of the banality of evil kind of things. Kind of like they did with Lex Luthor, from the green and purple armor to the business suit. And arguably, the Mandarin is the first character I saw like that in my life. In that very issue of Iron Man I mentioned earlier, he is initially encountered under the pseudonym of Gene Khan because he was allegedly a descendant of Genghis Khan, and he's got slick back black hair and a mustache, and he's got a suit. Um, so those things kind of went into my consciousness and came out with Kong, and so now it seems like it's coming out in this, and so I'm happy. I mean, I wish I could have put Kong on screen before this movie, but that's the way it goes. But it's resonating with me. So, like I said earlier, I can see why they made the decisions they did. And I hope I've delineated that within the context of changing Fu Manchu, conflating him with the Mandarin, his relationship with Shang Chi, wanting Shang Chi to help take over his empire, the immortality thing, international criminal network, which is going to be the Ten Rings, the rings themselves that the Mandarin had. Um, But that leaves us to the big, big elephant in the room. Besides the fact that Shang-Chi's personality is a bit different, at least on the surface, a little more jovial, a little bit Americanized, which I did with another martial arts character of mine years ago, Jun Kim, Liao Jun Kim, and he was kind of a Shang-Chi-esque character in the beginning, and he gradually became acclimated or corrupted by America, depending on how you look at it. So now he's kind of talks a little different, and his perspectives, they're continually changing. He still is in Buddhist, but Shang-Chi is taking all that to another level. He seems like kind of just an average late teens, whatever, early 20s um, Asian American in San Francisco who likes to hang out. But he's got that secret past and that secret training, and they're going to show that in the flashbacks. And then, of course, he's going to have to start popping out of that training when he goes up against, like, Death Dealer and Razor Fist. So the elephant in the room, it doesn't have to be a white elephant, but in a way it is. What about the MI6? What about the intelligence agencies? What about, because like I said, they've redone his sister. I doubt she's as old as she was in the comics, but maybe. But they do have a fight at one point, and so that's still a dynamic from the comic. That's good. But they've disposed of the agents of MI6, Leiko Wu, Shang-Chi's girlfriend, and Clive Reston, who is kind of the heir to the Walt Newton family, which I described on my Philip Jose Farmer video for She Never Slept. And this Blackjack Tar character. And then there's other agents that kind of weave in and out. Those are the three main ones, and the ones they brought back for the Max series in the 2000s. None of those characters are in this movie. And there doesn't seem to be any analogs. Why? Because they pretty much just cut the MI6 thing out. Okay. Now, a good friend of mine told me it kind of rankled him that this happened, and he's a big fan of spy fiction and the Walt Newton family and the whole kind of pulpy approach that Doug Minch and Paul Gulacy had during that run, which was a little different than the kind of pseudo spiritual slash Shaw Brothers vibe that creators Steve Englehart and Jim Starlin brought to the first few issues of the series. So it's no longer going to be this kind of international caper against Fu Manchu, in which Shang-Chi throws in his lot with the games of deceit and death, as he called them, that Nayland and Fu Manchu play. He's detached a bit, but he always managed to save all these other cats with his abilities. So that's all gone, and let's talk briefly about why. James Bond's been done to death in films, maybe past the point of death at this point. Old school secret agent films aren't really in currency anymore. I mean, you could arguably make some period ones. I think that would be cool. But there have been so many made in so many countries since the success of Doctor No that over the decades, that it would be able to play out for Marvel to try to be part of that genre or trend, which is not really even remotely popular on a mass scale in movies at all. It's just, a lot of people go see the James Bond films. That's about it. There's not enough market to support these kind of films anymore. Um, that may change. You never know. But a lot of it's because the shift of the world, the Cold War ended, the politics changed. Closest we're probably going to get is the Black Widow movie, which is finally coming out in September. Um, and that makes sense because we got Shield. Shield was directly inspired by James Bond and that stuff. That's the closest you get is the current spy thriller, techno thriller. But this kind of globe hopping, bed hopping adventure paradigm, uh, it doesn't set as easily. I mean, it seemed cool in the comics because it was kind of at odds. The two sides were at odds with each other, and that was cool. And yet modernized, but uh, I agree with the people who wrote the screenplay. Probably they were thinking it wouldn't work. At first, I thought, why couldn't it work? But then I thought, really, first of all, I'm not interested in a bunch of British secret agents being characters in an MCU movie. Like I said, I think it's been done to death. I think Shield is really the American MI6 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the Marvel universe, they both exist. Um, but Occam's razor, we've reduced it to we don't need James Bond and Nick Fury in the same universe. We have Nick Fury. I'm just talking about the movies. I'm not talking about the comics. So, or the Walt Newton or crossover universe that my friend Sean Lee Levin kind of is the curator of and written two good books on. Um, so I get it. They just dropped them whole cloth. The whole intrigue with Clive and Liko and Shang Chi, Triangle, Blackjack, and they can't use Nayland Smith and Petrie anyway. So they'd have to make more analog characters for him. And I think the one on one idea of Shang-Chi being tasked with stopping his father, which he was in the comics, but alone maybe, or with some less savvy allies than these super secret agents, um, after being attempted to be coerced into joining the fold. I actually think that's a stronger dramatic thing. It could be a really, if done right, if directed and acted and of course written correctly, I think it could be awesome. And that it was a major theme of the comic book, so they still have translated that essential aspect, um, and they've it's translated the essential aspects of both Fu Manchu and the Mandarin, boiled down into kind of a modernized, palatable Yellow Peril kind of villain, and they've done it. There looks like they're doing it cinematically through films that have shown these kind of characters, great foreign films that have shown these characters. No American films have really done it right. Maybe this will be the beginning of something different. And by having Tony Young play this character, yes, that's stunt casting, the max, but it is brilliant stunt casting. So I'm more enthused than I was, a lot more. There's other Easter eggs I found out about in the movie, but I'm not going to go all into that. I recommend you search up some other videos. But I wanted to touch on the ones that were of concern to me, that impressed me, and then made me reevaluate that whether the movie will be good or not. I'm much more optimistic now. Now that I know Mandarin is immortal and he has the 10 rings actually on him with powers. Um, that's one of the major. Really, just that whole character, that fusion of Yellow Peril archetype characters with Tony Young playing it in the modern day in a different context. It's brilliant concept, and if done right, it could really elevate this film to a high level. I'm not going to maybe be as enthused when Shang-Chi's all on his own and he joins the Avengers or something, but then he's really going to kind of have to put up or shut up, with the character. I mean, he's going to have to be on his own merits. And not just his abilities, I'm sure they'll do that, but his personality. And they won't have the fish out of water angle that Shang Chi had in the comics, or that my character June Kim has. So yeah. So I was going to talk about some other upcoming things. All I'm going to say now is that uh, Black Widow's coming out July 9th. It's the day before my birthday. If I have any money, I will go to the multiplex near my house and watch it in the theater. Hopefully, there won't be many people in there because of the COVID thing. And I also like it when there's not many people. I go to the balcony and chill. Um, I would like to do that. And in September, Shang-Chi. Again, I would probably go see that in the theater, but I don't know what things are going to be like then either. But it looks like those are finally actually going to be out this year. Eternals, I think, is November, maybe. I could be wrong. It could be later. There's not an official trailer or even an official teaser trailer yet. However, I do know the cast, and I have seen some photos and designs of a lot of them, and I'm not at all impressed with any of them. A little depressed, actually. But as more comes up with that, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Marvel will surprise me again. Who knows? Um, I'm just a Kirby kind of freak, as y'all know by now. Obviously, my "What Does a Comic Book Creator Really Do" video kind of drove that home, to the dismay of many Stan Lee partisans. And I tried to be fair with Stan. I was fair to him. I wasn't fair to some of his fanatical zombie drone followers. But anyway, uh, that's it, man. I just wanted to throw this shit out there, wrap up the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, open up the, looking forward to Shang-Chi. Again, I grew up in the 70s. Shang-Chi and the Falcon were integral parts of my childhood. I emotionally invested in those characters and in the Eternals. So, I just wanted to pay off on screen, as a lot of the other ones have done for me, like Daredevil. Oh my God. All right, that's enough. I'll see you soon. I don't know what's next. More music, maybe more movies. Rock on.